You're small. That's the first thing you know about yourself. Not because anyone tells you. You know because everything around you is bigger. And in the world you just arrived in, bigger is the only language that matters. You crawled out of the ground already knowing this. That's the thing about being an orc. You don't get an orientation. You don't get a childhood. Not really. You get a battlefield, and a body that understands what battlefields are for, and the immediate, innate knowledge that you are currently at the bottom of something very large. That's fine. You're already looking up. 60 million years ago, something called the Old Ones looked at a galaxy being torn apart by ancient machine gods and decided what the situation required was intervention. They made the orcs. You are the product of intentions so old that the beings who had them are gone. The enemies they made you to fight have been sleeping under the galaxy for longer than humanity has existed. None of this is information you have, and you wouldn't particularly care if you did. But it's in you anyway. In the cells, in the spores, in the fungal biology that does things no purely animal organism has any business doing. The knowledge is genetic. The Mechboy doesn't know how engines work because he was taught. He knows because something encoded it into his DNA 60 million years ago and left it there. You got something different. Every orc comes out of the ground with basic knowledge. How to hold a weapon, how to read the hierarchy, how to survive the first few hours in a world that doesn't care about you. But you came out with something extra, a pull toward the top of something, and the baseline understanding that the way up is through aggression. The first fight you win is nothing. Another boy, roughly your size, over something that probably doesn't matter. You don't win cleanly. You won because you got back up one more time than he did, and when it was over, you were standing and he wasn't. And then something happens. You get slightly bigger. Not much. Not enough that anyone notices, but enough that you notice. And that's the thing everything else is built on. Every orc who wins enough fights gets bigger. Every orc who gets bigger wins more fights. And the hierarchy isn't assigned or inherited or negotiated. It's grown. The Waagh field does the thinking. The vast collective psychic energy every orc generates just by existing. The field that tells you who's in charge and how far from the top you currently are. Right now it's saying, keep going. There's a moment when other orcs start moving out of your way. It doesn't happen all at once. A path clears a little faster. A grudge doesn't get started. The body language of creatures who've assessed the situation and made a practical decision. You're bigger than you were, visibly, undeniably bigger. And in orc society, that means something. You're becoming a knob. Better equipped, meaner by every measurable standard. Crude armor accumulated from fights rather than issued. But there's a war boss. There's always a war boss. 9 feet of scar tissue and battered iron armor, with the Waagh field radiating off him like heat off an engine. You watch him the way you've watched everyone above you. Carefully. Learning. Waiting. He knows you're watching. They always know. The gap closes in increments too small to see on any given day, too large to ignore across a season of campaigns. One day, the gap is close enough. The fight doesn't last long. When it was over, you're standing and he isn't. The Waagh field shifts. It shifts around you now. Every orc in range knows you're the biggest thing in the room before you've said a word. The field never lies. You're the war boss now.
Here's what nobody explains about being a war boss. You didn't choose the Waagh. The Waagh chose you. It's been building since before you won the fight that made you boss, accumulating in the field around you the way scar tissue accumulates on skin. Other orcs start arriving. Not your warband. Different orcs, from different tribes, drawn by the field the way iron is drawn by a magnet, with the same absence of choice and the same inevitability. You point at something on the horizon. Everyone moves. That's the moment. Not the fight. That was the beginning. This is the thing itself. The instant you stop being someone following and become someone followed. The WAAAGH doesn't belong to you exactly. You belong to it, the way the biggest stone in a landslide belongs to the landslide. You're the front of it, the reason it has a direction. The Mechboyz are building bigger things. The Weirdboy is crackling at the edges, green energy jumping off him in arcs, eyes going the color of something that hasn't decided yet whether it's going to go very right or very wrong. You keep him pointed at the enemy. That's the correct use of a Weirdboy. Aim him, stand back, and let Gork and Mork sort out the specifics. Let's talk about what you've actually built. The Mechboy is why your vehicles work, why your weapons fire, why machines that should be physically impossible are functioning. He's not doing this through training. He's doing it because the knowledge is genetic, and the WAAAGH field fills in the gaps. He believes it works. You believe it works. Enough orcs believe it works. Therefore, it works. The Adeptus Mechanicus has been trying to fully understand this for 10,000 years and hasn't managed yet. Your knobs are the closest thing you have to a command structure, which means they're a group of things almost large enough to challenge you at any moment. You keep them pointed at enemies. You make sure they're winning enough fights to stay satisfied, without winning so many that they start looking at you the way you used to look at the last war boss. It's a balance. You maintain it the same way everything in orc society is maintained, by being undeniably, continuously, visibly larger than the next option. You've fought the Imperials. They're good. Their Space Marines have the specific quality of being large enough and hard enough that they can really put up a fight. You've beaten them. Some of them. The ones you didn't beat, you came back. You always come back. That's the thing the Imperials keep failing to fully absorb. Killing you doesn't end the war. It just ends the current version of you. When you die, the spores will already be in the ground, seeded into every world you've touched, waiting. Years from now, something will come out of that ground that grew up in the aftermath of a WAAAGH. Just like you did. You fought other orcs too. These are different fights. Less like war, more like argument. The same species, the same drives, pointed at each other rather than a shared enemy. You've beaten war bosses who were bigger than you when the fight started. The scars from those are in places other fights didn't reach. You don't regret them. They're the best fights you've had. The galaxy keeps providing. There are things out there you haven't fought yet. Ancient metal warriors rising from tombs beneath worlds younger races built cities on. A hive mind consuming the galaxy from the edge inward. Both of these sound like excellent problems to solve. The orcs have been doing this for 60 million years. They were doing it before the Imperium existed, before humanity stood upright, before the Eldar built the civilization they destroyed. You can't end an orc war. You can only pause it. The war boss isn't a leader, isn't even a weapon. He's a process, self-perpetuating, galaxy-spanning, set in motion before your species had the concept of a beginning, and continuing after everything else has found an end. The process doesn't need you to understand it. It just needs you to keep pointing at things. There's a world on the horizon. You think about the ground you crawled out of. Small, scrappy, looking up at the top of something very tall with the attention of a creature that had already decided it was going to get there. You got there. You're the biggest thing in the room. Everything you are was built from wins stacked on wins. The hierarchy climbed one fight at a time. The body shaped by 60 million years of design, and a lifetime of deciding to get back up
one more time.